Hi guys, it's Paul from the Mellon Summer Redesign team, and I wanted to talk you through in another tutorial what I'm calling the Tech Decider. This is a process that I use in my own courses to figure out what tech tools and platforms I need, either for courses that are entirely online or that have to be flexible or that are sort of partly online, partly in person. So this is a process that I use both in my own class and then also in consulting with other teaching teams to figure out what their tech needs are and what platforms they should go with. It's a really simple process. The very high level way of thinking about it is asking yourself just three questions and reflecting on these really hard. First, what do I even need tech for in my class, and getting really specific about the elements of your course that are going to require technology. Secondly, reflecting a bit on your tech criteria. So do you really value user friendliness, or is there a certain sort of functionality that you just absolutely need? I need my students to be able to make comments on each other's papers. Or is it something else? Is it, just sort of ease of interaction between instructor and student? What are your tech criteria? And then finally, actually going out, doing a little bit of research and figuring out which tech tools are going to meet the needs that you've identified, and then how to use the criteria to select between your options. So first step, here's what I actually do. I like to do this by hand. So this is a picture of the brainstorm that the teaching team and I had when we were trying to figure out our tech needs. What we did is we broke it up by thinking about, okay, what are our tech needs for the course for anything that takes place before a course meeting. Okay. And there we thought, well, we got to communicate. We got to be able to email all of our students, right? They have to be able to access the digital content to prepare for the course. We want to have them take quizzes ahead of time. We're going to need a grade book, right? This is not even a before thing. This is an overarching thing for the whole course. We'll need a Dropbox for assignments. Some sort of file format that they're writing the assignments in that allows us to give feedback on the assignment rather than just, with the assignment as we turn it back, et cetera. So big picture overall, outside of course, but in the context of the whole course, what are those needs? The second thing we did is we thought, okay, now in class, what are our students going to need technologically? Part of that involves thinking about remote students. They're going to need to access the classroom. They'll need, Zoom or a platform to do that. But now for us, one of the big questions was, how do we get students to interact with each other? A lot of our in-class time is spent on activities where the students are supposed to be directly engaging with each other. So how do we do that when they're all sitting 6 feet apart wearing masks and they're not allowed to touch the same objects, right? One of the things I do is I have them write on a sheet of paper and hand it to the person next to them, read and write. That's out. We can't do that anymore. So what are the tech needs there? And then we broke it into those two chunks. And then one more chunk, we thought, what do our students need technologically to facilitate dialogue? Our students meet in a dialogue section once a week with their peers. And so we thought, what are the tech needs associated with those dialogue meetings? Once you have this list, it should be this massive brainstorm, a bunch of sort of different things you've got on this list. Then I think it's time to step back for a second and ask what your tech criteria are. Let me give you a couple of ours. This is a ranked list. It's an old list. It's not our final one, but our criteria are first and foremost, any tech that we use has to be as personal as possible. We want our students to feel like they're learning from a human and to feel like they're being seen as a human. Secondly, we want them to use platforms that they're used to. So we don't want them to have to learn a whole complicated learning management system and then a tool within it, and then like the nested discussion board feature, and then to get feedback through that. Instead, we think, it's much better, if possible, to use formats that they're already used to working in and that they might have to work in the future. So a member of the teaching team that I'm working with this semester, Megan Sullivan and I, we write together sometimes. We use Google Docs. In our course, the big assignment is to have students write in a sort of a big reflection paper. And so we thought, why not have them write that in Google Docs? We can give them feedback in the way that we give each other feedback, and we can allow them to be using a platform that they're going to be using anyway in their future. Okay, so that's the second one. I won't read through the whole list, but the important thing here is just really figuring out what's important to you in terms of your tech criteria. I guess I'll highlight one more, and that is a lot of the schools that I work with in consulting, and certainly for us, it's a really big deal to minimize the number of platforms used. You don't want students clicking from a website to an LMS to an off LMS platform to whatever else. Both because it's not elegant, it's going to increase confusion in general, decrease clarity, and increase the cognitive load that you're putting on your students. And also, you don't want to have to do that. You don't want to have to manage all of these different platforms and all these different communication streams, et cetera. I'll say it's never possible to get a course down to just one platform. It'd be amazing if we could. But minimizing the number of platforms is always a huge deal for a lot of the folks that I work with. Okay, then step 3, you're in a position to actually just start looking at the tech tools and figuring out what you need. Unfortunately, this isn't hard because there's not that many of them. And that's a joke, of course, because the number of ed tech tools is insane. This is just a picture I found on the internet, landscape of educational technology, but this is 2017. There's thousands more. I don't want to stress you out. So I'm going to give you a tool, and it is what I call the Tech Decider. So here's how the Tech Decider works. It's just a Google sheet, and up on top, what you're going to do is you're going to list all of the discrete educational technology needs that you identified in step 1. Now, sometimes they'll be combinable, right? So we need to send emails to all students. We also need to communicate about course policies. Okay, that's the same thing. Like that can be just one column here. It doesn't have to be like emails, additional communication, et cetera. So kind of play with the list, but make sure that you've covered all of your tech needs. Make sure, cross off the things as you go through the list. Make sure you've covered all of them. And then over here in the leftmost column, you want to list all of the platforms or the tech tools that you're considering, right? So you'll have to do a bunch of research, and it'll become pretty clear probably pretty soon or pretty early. You don't have to do that much research to figure out, okay, here are the contenders, right? For discussion boards, do I want to use CampusWire, Slack, or Packback? Maybe there's like a bunch more, but these would be fine, right? Or the sort of in-house discussion board on your LMS maybe. So once you come up with a list of all the ones that you're considering, I like to group them by functionality as much as I can, just as a rough heuristic, because it helps with the next step. But list all of those in the leftmost column, and then you're ready to start evaluating, comparing, and figuring out what the actual tech package you're going to have to put together for your courses. Let me show you ours. So this is our actual decider doc that we filled out as a teaching team. And here's how we were thinking about it. So these are our tech needs. We need to be able to email all students. They have to be able to access the content. We need a gradebook that's sort of digitally integrated with the various grading mechanisms that we have. We're going to have weekly quizzes, and those have to be online. They have to turn in written assignments. Okay, so we've listed all these things. We listed all the sort of potential platforms that we're thinking about or tools that we're thinking about. And then all you have to do is you go through and you start putting check marks next to any functionality that the tool or platform you're considering has. So for us, we have a course website. That's how students are going to access content. It doesn't really have any of the other functionality. It's kind of like just a one function tool. We thought Gmail and MailChimp. We were kind of comparing these two to each other. They both do email to all students, and really that's all they do, the only functionality they have. But this sort of, these were the contenders. Now, you guys can figure this out, obviously. What we did is we highlighted the different rows that we decided on going with. And here I'll just highlight, we're still undecided about 2 platforms. We don't know if we're going to go with Slack or CampusWire in order to allow students to discuss with each other and also chat. Those are kind of separate features, separate functionalities that were really important for us. But we just haven't decided which one to go with. We obviously don't need both, but we're going to have to decide. So I just highlighted those in orange. The functionality, just to kind of get in the weeds for a second to illustrate. So They both allow you to organize chat groups of various sizes. They both serve as a back channel for remote students to communicate with you during lecture or in between times. And then they both have really dynamic, really functional discussion board features that allow you to post and embed various media, et cetera. Okay, so they both do all those things. And now what I'm going to do, I met with the Campus Wire rep again today for a half hour, and I asked a bunch of specific questions, got some really important information out of that, specifically about privacy settings. Turns out Campus Wire doesn't allow you to set the privacy settings for the chats in a way that would ensure that other students in the course couldn't see the chats of students separated into certain groups. That's a huge deal for us. Privacy is a huge deal. So that might be a deal breaker. I'm going to meet with the Slack representative from our school on Monday to just mock up an actual discussion board to see if it's going to be too confusing for our students or what. And we'll make the decision based on that. Once you've got all yellow rows, you just got to go through. You got to make sure there's a check mark in it, a yellow check mark in each of the columns, at least one. And if there's more than one, then you get to decide. Am I going to do weekly quizzes on Sakai? Because I'm going to use Sakai for some of these other features. Or am I going to use a quizzing platform? If there's any redundancy, you'll also see that. And so you'll be able to eliminate and minimize the number of platforms if that's, again, something that is important to you, which surely it is. Okay, so that's how it works. I'm going to put this template into the comments. And if you want to use it, just make a copy of it to your own Google Drive. It should be then editable, and you could just use it however you'd like. If you have questions, let me know. And happy hunting for all of your tech tools and platforms. Thanks so much for watching.